Hello. Okay. So, if you were here last week, so we're going through the steps, if anyone is new and not sure what we're doing. So this is the month of February Saturday steps. So for the last few Saturdays, starting at 1, we went through and we got up to 4. And as Donna said, this is our last night, so we gotta really move along. Here we go. Okay. Starting from the beginning. We got to, though, because the beginning is the reason for the end. We are gathered here today, those of us who are alcoholics, because we had to stop drinking, desperately wanted to stop drinking, and could not stop drinking. And we found this wonderful place that did not try to convince us to stop drinking, because it was a place full of people who had, who like us, couldn't be convinced into sobriety. And yet found a way to get sober that worked so well that for free they gather on a Saturday night to say, hey, we have some good news. Sobriety is an option for everyone, even people who can't get sober. What we found as people who could not stop drinking is we had to come to rely on a power greater than ourselves to do it for us. The trick was figuring out what was blocking us from that power. What we found is the thing that was blocking us from that power was us. Our great attempts to try to stop drinking were in fact blocking us from the power that was going to stop us. So not even our bad behavior was blocking us from God. Just our behavior, period. Just me being nice, me being sweet, me being generous, me being mean, me being manipulative, me being selfish, me being friendly. Me. All forms of me. We've been using this analogy of like I can't fly, I can't get myself to fly. My arms aren't wings. I'm constitutionally incapable of flight. And AA said, hey, Caroline, good news. There's a plane 12 steps away. And on that plane, you will go higher, faster, further than you could ever imagine. But you can't even acknowledge the plane while you're flapping. So we're going to teach you how to put your arms down. We can't really paint a picture of the plane for you, but don't worry, you'll see for yourself when you get there. We can't convince you to stop flapping. And we're not here to convince you to stop flapping. Your own broken arms have to do that for you. But we can show you, we can draw you a map for how to get to the plane once your arms are finally broken. Okay. Step 1, my arms broke. Step 1, I came to, I had to admit that I had to stop swearing to God that I'm going to take off. That's not the aha moment. The aha moment was, oh my God, I'm never going to take off. Now what? Step 2, you say there's a plane? Okay. Step 3, yeah, I'll do everything I can to get to that plane. Not, I will do everything I can to stop drinking. I will do everything I can to access a power that will do it for me. Yes, please hand me your spiritual toolkit. Not your sober toolkit. I got plenty of those, and they're great, except I don't have the power to use those tools. So I need a power toolkit, a spiritual toolkit, tools that will get me to this power. How do I get to this power? You say in We Agnostics, God is everything. How can I not be accessing this thing that you say is everything? Glad you asked, Caroline. You keep looking at you as the everything. Stop needing to be the everything, and the everything will reveal itself. And then I say, okay, how do I stop being the everything? I've been taught that self-reliance is a virtue. I've been looking around at people who keep expecting me to do stuff. How do I stop? I don't know how to stop playing God. They say, well, I'm glad you asked, Caroline, because right now what we got to do is launch into looking on paper all the ways that you do play God. Don't try to stop playing God yet. Don't worry. You're not fixing yourself. Just let's find out on paper what playing God looks like for you. And we did that 4th step. We did it last week. We learned a lot about me. We found out that anytime I am resentful, it's because someone is thwarting my attempts at playing God. Anytime, and there are no exceptions, as it turns out. I mean, maybe I just haven't found any yet. When I'm afraid, it's because I don't know how to make sure I'm going to get what I'm really sure I need. Or I'm afraid, what is it? I think in the Joe and Charlie tapes that he said that there are 3 fears. I'm not going to get what I want, I'm going to lose what I have, or I'm going to get caught. Those are the 3 fears. And I thought, I'm sure there are exceptions. Have not found any yet. And any time I'm in a relationship with a person, whether they know I'm in the relationship with them or not. We also talked about last week, my playing God this isn't a program of good and bad, right and wrong. It's not a program of you're bad, drunk, good, sober. It is a program of self-reliant, drunk, God-reliant, sober. So the way that I play God isn't, if I'm being mean, that's not always an indicator that I'm playing God. And if I'm being nice, that's not necessarily an indicator that I'm not playing God. This isn't mean nice. There are plenty of times, I am the master of getting what I want by being nice. I am very good at that. And I am very nice. I'll carry you across the street on my way to the bar. You know what I mean? So, so we list on paper. Okay, we did that pretty quick. So we list on paper. I'm going to do this, just bear with me here. I'm going to do just a really quick fourth step thing so that we can refer to this as we go forward. I'm glad that we spent so much time on the fourth step last week, because that is, you know, if you, they say, I've heard this said before, if I call you and say, hey, how do I get to your house? The first thing they ask me is, well, where are you? I have to know where I am in order to know the directions for where I'm going. So where I am is the first thing they say. So, okay, you want to know how you play God? List all your resentments, and let's start there. And I'm mad at Sue because I hope this isn't stupid. She looked at me funny. Even after I loaned her money, she still looked at me funny. And so I smiled at her to get her to stop looking at me funny. And she still wouldn't stop looking at me funny. So I punched her right in the nose. Still looked at me funny. I tried all these different ways to get her to stop looking. She wouldn't stop looking at me funny. What does it affect? It affects my self-esteem. My personal relations, because people might not want to hang out with me if Sue doesn't want to hang out with me. I need, you know what I mean? Like, this really is so dumb. I can't believe this is what I'm using as an example, but it comes up a lot. My ambitions, because part of my ambition is to be liked, right? Like, I actually do have that ambition. For me personally, I have an ambition to be, maybe it's personal to me, I'm a musician, and I really want to be like a famous entertainer musician. And so it is very disturbing to me when I'm interacting with someone who doesn't seem to be entertained by me, even when I'm on. That's like, that it actually disrupts it's disturbing. So that does affect my ambition, which in turn affects my money. This whole thing, I mean, like, you know what I mean? All these things are affected. And we go through our whole life, all the resentments that we have, and we get down why we're mad, what instinct is being threatened. Next person, why we're mad, what instinct is being threatened. People, places, institutions. I had I had Boston on my list. And Boston's great, but I had it on my list. Oh. You're from Boston. I had whole collective things. I had religion. Okay. Went back through my whole life. And then the book asks me to, okay, if I want to get free of this, I need to rigorously, honestly, for the first time ever, look at my mistakes. One of the mistakes I'm making with Sue is I'm demanding she look at me a certain way. I'm demanding she behave a certain way. I'm demanding that she like me. I'm putting all of these needs of mine in her hands. That is not fair to Sue. Later in the 10th step, it's going to say one of the promises / instructions is that love and tolerance has to be my code, gets to be my code, and I cannot love you conditionally. I cannot love you only if you look at me right. That is not love. That's hostage taking. Turns out every person I interacted with was my hostage. Or my worker, my employee, my whatever, but not my fellow. So I go through and I find out I have all these things, these natural instincts that we have for survival. These things, these are not bad instincts to have. What's not going to work is for me to rely on you to meet them, to make sure they're met. My worth can't be at stake while I'm interacting with you. I cannot love you if my worth is at stake. Does that make sense? So we have a whole long list of how it is, the mistakes that I'm making. I should have spent way less time on this part, and I should be spending way more time on this 4th column of my mistakes. Because, again, when I go to make amends, this is the behavior I'm amending. So we've got this. Then we've got a fear inventory. The book says I'm driven by 100 forms of fear. I'm trying to be driven by this plane. Again, I cannot be driven by God and the plane and 100 forms of fear. It's one or the other. So I list my fears. I find out that I'm afraid of people not liking me. I'm afraid of not having enough money. I'm afraid of not being lovable. I'm afraid of not being happy. I'm afraid what other things am I afraid of? They all kind of boil down to that. Say, did someone call out?
Snakes.
Snakes, I'm afraid of snakes. All these, the reason I'm playing God, again, is not because I'm an asshole, excuse my language, it's because I'm afraid. I'm not bad, I'm afraid. So I get the list of the fears that are running my show, and then I do a sex inventory, and I find out, so I've been acting badly with all these people in my life. Not because I relish in other people getting hurt, but because I wasn't considering them at all. That's what I find out. I'm not lying to you because I get a kick out of that. I'm not stealing from you because I get a kick out of that. I'm stealing from you because I need money and I'm not worried about you. I'm not thinking of you at all. I'm only thinking of me. The book says, alcohol is not the root of my troubles. Self-centeredness is. So we find all this stuff out. Now that I know where I am, so I call you and I say, how do I get to your house? You say, well, where are you? I'm here. They don't say, okay, think on that for a couple weeks. And then what you're going to want to do is consider driving straight. They're saying, okay, well, immediately what you got to do, you're going to launch into some action now. Yes. We're literally going into action now. Now that we know where we are, we're going into action. And the first thing I'm going to do, the first step towards getting freed from the bondage of self, The first thing I'm going to do, this first act of humility, is for the first time in my life, I'm going to find another human being and I'm going to tell them the truth, regardless of what they're going to think of me as a result. I have never done that before. I have never admitted this. I just admitted it to me for the first time. But I've spent my whole life hiding this from you. The book talks about how we lead a double life. I've spent my whole life putting on a show for you in order to protect these instincts. So the first thing I'm going to do to get these instincts out of my hands and into God's is I'm going to reveal my true self to another human being. Every dark twist and cranny the book talks about. It's funny. I love the book is so well written. Because, when it was written in a time when we didn't have regular AA meetings on every corner with sponsors like raising their hands and standing up and saying, yes, I, stranger, will hear your fourth step. So you had to actually go out and find another human being who probably was not alcoholic and was going to learn all this stuff about you. So they knew people were going to be a little hesitant. They did emphasize the importance of finding the right person who was trustworthy. But until I tell someone all of this, I'm still self-reliantly protecting my self-esteem and stuff by hiding this from everyone. Until I actually share this with someone, I'm still playing God by making sure no one finds out this stuff. Does that make sense? So my first great act of humility, the book says common sense becomes uncommon sense. I have to do everything basically the opposite that I've been doing. This is my first opposite action. By going and telling someone, by letting another human being know that I am not perfect. I don't know, maybe I really thought that I was, and B, that it was important that I be perfect. I thought that was the assignment. For me, my worth came from being perfect. And when I couldn't be perfect, the least I could do was try to appear perfect. And so everything I did in life was an attempt to convince you that I was perfect. So for the first time now, I'm actually going to reveal to another human being my imperfections. That alone is so freeing. And the book says, on the other side of revealing to another person this, I thank God from the bottom of my heart that I now know God better. And we would think that from the bottom of my heart I would know me better because I just spent a whole day talking about me. But no, I don't know me better. I've done something that isn't self-reliant, and as a result, God has been revealed. I've stopped playing God for one afternoon, and immediately God is revealed. That's not to say I disappear into nirvana, because that was not my fifth step experience, I assure you. For one thing, I didn't tell my sponsor everything in my first fifth step. So it doesn't say we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know God in all of God's infinite entirety. We just know God better. I know God better now than I did this morning. Okay, so I reveal it. Then I go home for an hour, am quiet for an hour, carefully consider all the things that we've just now been talking about. my powerlessness. I can't stop myself from drinking. I do believe God can do this for me if I could just figure out how to get to God. Yes, I will do everything I can to get to God. I see now why it was so hard to get to God. Now, am I willing? The book says these words, am I willing to let God take this from me? And that's an important distinction because if I want God to take my thieving ways, that means that the next time I'm hungry, I'm not going to steal your food. If I want God to take my dishonesty, that means that the next time the truth might get me in trouble, I still have to tell it. That's not an easy, that's not an easy sacrifice. I really wanted God to take my self-pity. I really wanted God to take my resentments because I was still losing sleep over some of these even after my fifth step. And I remember, and I came from a sort of a wacky AA land when I was first getting sober. And I was telling my sponsor that I still had these resentments. And she was like, Caroline, go into the shower. Imagine that the resentment is a necklace around your neck. And take off the necklace. And so I would go into the shower, take off the freaking necklace, and still stew on my way out of the shower. And she'd be like, okay, Caroline. Leave the necklace on while you're in the shower. Give yourself that. Every time you take a shower, you're allowed to stew in your resentment. That's your permitted resentment time. When you get out of the shower, though, you don't get to have it anymore. You know what I mean? So I would go to the shower, I'd stew, I'd leave the shower, and then feel really ashamed because I couldn't stop stewing. And my stewing looked like this. I kept imagining and daydreaming about these people in this column, finally realizing how much they had hurt me and how hard I had worked to make them happy, and them coming to me and apologizing. And that's it. That was like my grandiose daydream. That was my wild fantasy life. Is Meredith coming to say she's sorry. Like, that's literally as like wild as my fantasies were for a while. Finally, something clicked and I realized, oh, if I want God to take this self-pity and if I want God to take this resentment, I don't get to sit and feel sorry for myself. I don't get to sit, I didn't have it all, like I didn't get it all, but I realized that's what I have to be willing to let go of. I don't get to sit on the windowsill, chain smoking, and fantasizing about all the wrongs people had done. Was I willing to do something different? And so I was sitting on the windowsill smoking cigarettes and starting to go to my like default daydream of Meredith coming saying she's sorry. And then I realized, okay, let me try this. Let me do something else, anything else. No one told me yet to go like find people to help. I hadn't gotten that far, but I don't know, I went to go do something else. And I noticed that I started to get free of self-pity. That God was willing and able to take it as soon as I was willing to let it go. That God was willing and able to take it as soon as I was willing to not rely on it. That was like my first moment of realizing that as soon as I stop playing God, as soon as I stop being in charge of my own well-being, God is immediately there. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's step 6 of being willing to let God have all of these things is a very short paragraph, but huge key turn in our steps. Then, once I'm willing, then I ask, God, I'm willing that you would have all of me, good and bad. I'm kind of like like step 3 is my default like favorite prayer that I say all day, every day. So sometimes I get the wording of step 7 wrong. So let me not do that from the podium. Let me go to the source. My Creator, if you have a book, it's 76. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. So I don't even get to say what's good and bad anymore. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. Okay. Now again, if the person whose house I'm going to is giving me these directions, she doesn't say, okay, now that you've turned left at the 7-Eleven, hang out for a bit. Consider how far you've come. Reflect. She says, okay, now you turn right. I mean, now you never pause. Except throughout the day, we'll get to that. But not on the ladder of the steps. There's no pause and stop and think about how far you've come. Keep going. I've asked God. I've become willing to stop relying on self-pity to make me feel better and make sure I'm okay. I've asked God to take it and be in charge of taking care of me. Now the very next thing, God says, okay, I have to act as if God in fact is. And if God is, then God is in fact removing these things from me. And as the book says, faith without works is dead. Faith without works is doubt. Do you know what I mean? So if I really believe God is taking these things, I now have to move forward without them. And the first thing I have to go do is amend all the things I did when I was using them. I can't say, God, take my thieving ways, but let me just hold on to that money I stole. I have to immediately, God, take not only my thieving ways, but take away my fear of economic insecurity. Take away my fear that I'm not going to have enough money. I believe that you're going to take that fear from me. I believe you're going to take care of me financially, so much so, I'm going to go give the money back. If I say, God, please free me from the fear of what people think about me, I have to go and tell people truths that might affect the way they think about me and see what happens. If I want to be caught by God, I have to jump. And now in 8 and 9, I am gonna jump. And I'm gonna sit across from someone without my sponsor sitting right here, grading me. Because we do a lot of this, that's important to know, because this was hard for me. Again, I got by on life by getting people to like me. I was doing okay if you thought I was doing okay. So when I set out to do these steps, if my sponsor approved, then that meant I was getting free. If my sponsor said I was getting free, then I was getting free. If my sponsor liked me or thought I was funny or applauded me, then that was enough for me. But I cannot get free that way. So now I'm going to sit across from someone, and my sponsor's never really going to know how this conversation goes. My sponsor, no one's recording it. I can't, if I want, I can sit across from you, tell you how wrong you were, go back to my sponsor, tell her how great it went. Do you know what I mean? I can do anything I want. For the first time in my life, I found myself with no one watching, sitting across from someone and telling them the truth, admitting my faults, and not saying a word about theirs. It was so fun. I mean, really, it was. It hurt. It was scary and all these things, but it was so fun. Like, the rule was I couldn't say, here's what I did, I was wrong, but. There was no but. I wasn't allowed to say that. And no one was holding me accountable except me. And the only reason I wasn't saying but is because I really believed God was going to do something cool on the other side of that. I was not saying but to get an A. I was not saying but so that I could experience God. I was truly doing something scary in order to experience God. That's fun. I mean, that's a fun game. I'm not saying I did every amends perfectly, because I did go to my ex with an itemized list of all my wrongs, hoping that she would say, wow, you're doing great, Caroline. I'm so impressed. Teach me how you're doing this. You know, the book is correct when the book talks about how it's hard to go to someone who's done more wrongs than me. And there were plenty of people who truly did more harm to me, I think, than I did to them. They started it. It's one thing to give lip service to it doesn't matter. It's another thing to actually behave as though it doesn't matter. And by behaving as though their wrongs don't matter, they suddenly don't matter. I suddenly am no longer at the mercy of other people's wrongs. You know what I mean? So I do these things. I'm going to keep moving forward in these steps and maybe jump back if, just in the interest of time. I will, though, we talk about the 9th step promises a lot. I'm a 10th step promises kind of girl, but the 9th are really good. And it says if we are painstaking about this phase, this amending action phase, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We are going to a new freedom and a new happiness. That is true. Because I am now living. I am not just believing. I am living in a way that is not dictated by your bad behavior. I am living in a way that is not dictated by my resentment. I'm living in a way that is not dictated by my bad behavior. I am living in a way. I am living a life where God is catching me. I am finding out that God is catching me, that God will catch me. I'm not just hoping God will, I'm finding out that God will. We are going to know a new freedom, a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I would say 9 out of 10 amends for me in my experience. This is a little bit, I want to choose my words carefully. The things that happened in our relationship, whether we stayed best friends or not, because most of the time we didn't. A lot of these conversations were the last time I spoke to these people. but I was useful to them and sincerely loving of them in a way that would not have been possible if I hadn't made the mistakes to begin with. I became suddenly grateful not just for God's great grace and power, but for the mistakes that invited God to show off that great grace and power. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. For me, it was because I was step by step, the noise of my scheming was getting turned down. The noise of my frantic, I was an alley cat. Not necessarily a mean one, but I did not know where X, Y, and Z was coming from, so I had to make sure I got X, Y, and Z any way I could get X, Y, and Z. And so all day, every day, I was just, how do I get X, Y, and Z? 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 How do I get X, Y? I didn't have to say, we tell ourselves, don't think like that. Don't do that. That's bad. That's not helpful. That's more, how do I get X, Y, and Z of shush? How do I get X, Y, and Z of shush? By doing this, by making these amends, the volume was getting turned down as a result. The volume was that was happening to me as a result of these amends that I was making, this behavior that I was amending, this leaping that I was doing. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. I think we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. I was like with people I'd been best friends with my whole life, had been in relationships with, intimate relationship, had lived with for years. And for the first time over coffee, I was caring about them. It was like a new feeling. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. These start to manifest before we are halfway through with the amends. Now, while I'm making amends, I am already doing 10, 11, and 12. So I don't need to wait. So this is the 9th step. I don't have to finish every amend before I start watching for selfishness. That would be weird. And yet my first sponsor told me I had to get all my amends done and then I could consider prayer and meditation. Do you know what I mean? It's so weird. So as we are clearing away the wreckage of our past, we are also continuing to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. And when these crop up, we don't beat ourselves up. That's not any of the steps. And nowhere in the book does it insist shame. Nowhere in the book does it say guilt would be relevant here. You know what I mean? And nowhere in the book does it say fix it. It says ask God to remove it. So when I get afraid, I don't try and just I ask God to remove it. Then I discuss it with another person because I'm not entirely sure I'm seeing it clearly. This is just day 3. Talk about it with another person immediately. And then apologize if necessary, quickly. I don't have to call you and invite you to a sit-down formal amendment. I mean, this step 10 is where this just becomes, this is in 11, it talks about all this has become a working part of our mind. This is the action that makes it a working part of my mind. So as soon as this crops up, I ask God to remove it. I discuss it with someone immediately. I apologize if I need to, quickly. Then I continue on with my day. Let me be reminded that I did not set out on a journey Let me be reminded that the journey I set out on, that first big prayer I said in step 3, God, relieve me from the bondage of self. Let me be reminded that the bondage of self is why I drink. Freed from the bondage of self, I no longer need to drink. It doesn't even occur to me. Let me be reminded that usefulness to others is the antidote to the bondage of self. I cannot be useful to you if I'm mad because you're standing in the way of my happiness. So that's why I'm watching for these things, not because they're bad. They are blocking me from being rocketed to a fourth dimension. And if you were like me, you're really trying to get rocketed to a fourth dimension. Love a rocket ride. Would do anything for a rocket ride. All right, let me. So after I, selfishness has cropped up, fear has cropped up. I've caught myself in mid-lie. I ask God to remove it. I talk about it with someone, run it by someone, make sure I'm seeing it clearly. Apologize quickly. So sorry, there wasn't an accident. I just overslept. What can I do to make that right? And then I immediately turn my thoughts to someone I can help. It's really important. That's the antidote to self-centeredness, helping someone else. Let me just quickly, the 10-step promises, because this is where we've ceased fighting anyone, anything or anyone, even alcohol. Thank God. This is in the midst of doing the 10th step. I couldn't name the day this happened to me. I couldn't name the hour. And I didn't notice it when it happened. I only realized that it had happened at some point. Freedom is not a feeling. It's a state of being. So it's not like I was struck with like a whiskey shot of freedom. I became free. And part of the reason I didn't notice is because the thing I'd been freed of was thinking about me. I've had people I've sponsored in the 10th step get really neurotic, constantly looking at, am I being selfish? Am I being selfish? I don't know if I'm being selfish. I don't know if this is right, or I don't know. Nope, doing it wrong. That's I'll know. I wasn't confused as to whether or not I was mad at you. You know what I mean? Like it's, and I'll get another chance in the 11th step to reflect and see where I've been selfish and dishonest. I gotta just go straight to the 11th step. Okay. Because working with others is important too. Okay. Step 11. So in the midst of all this, prayer and meditation, it gives us 2 parts. At night, when I retire at night, and this is so cool, it's cool that this is part of step 11, I look to see where I am still agnostic. Where today am I still in doubt? And I remember so clearly for like a week, and it was the same thing every week. When a certain person called, I was too afraid to answer. I mean, there were lots of other things, but this is the thing that stands out the most. I was too afraid to answer because I owed them something, or I knew they were going to be mad or something. And so for this period of time, I wasn't answering my phone when they called, and I kept logging that. And then I finally realized that self-reliance, Caroline. Answer the phone not to see what Brett has to say. Answer the phone to see why God's having him call you. Answer the phone to hear from God. So then I did. I don't remember what happened, but I'm still alive. I mean, it's all fine. And then on Awakening, pages 86 to 88, in New York, we had Step 11 meetings where the speaker would share their meditation practice. There is no wrong answer to the meditation question. How do you do it? Do whatever. Do it. If nothing else, reading on Awakening is pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. I'm doing this because I have to constantly not just stay close to God, but get increasingly closer to God. And at this point, this stuff is becoming a working part of my mind. The other plug I want to put in from my experiences in the 12 and 12, it does the St. Francis prayer. And for me, that is the part of grant that I may seek to console rather than to be consoled. Grant that I may seek to love rather than to be loved. It goes to everything. Let me seek to forgive rather than be forgiven. Let me seek to understand rather than be understood. That is getting, again, let me be free from the bondage of self. Let me not look at every single situation as an opportunity to get something. Let me continue to learn how to bring something. I'm getting married next month, and I assure you that for the last week, I've been panicked about what bad thing was going to happen to me. Who was going to not act right? Was my person that I'm marrying going to act right? What if they don't act right? What if I don't get, what if it's not, what if I, oh my God. And literally just today, and it's weird that we have to learn these lessons over and over again, but then I remembered while doing this St. Francis prayer, oh shit. What am I bringing to this occasion? And as soon as I thought, what am I going to bring to this to make sure that it's wonderful for my partner? Suddenly I was immediately free. In the spirit of that, again, I suffer from the bondage of self. Not because too many proteges are calling. I suffer from the bondage of self. When all else fails, and therefore a necessary step, it is literally all 11 steps make it possible for me to now do AA, which is step 12. The first 11 steps are literally grooming me to do what is AA, step 12. Working with another alcoholic, looking to be helpful to another alcoholic. Looking to give back what was so freely given to me. The second I stop giving it back, I am hoarding it. And if I am hoarding it, then I'm in the bondage of self and it is lost. The book uses the word vital. Self-sacrifice is vital. Whether I think I'm ready or not, whether I think I'm wise enough or not, whether it feels good, doesn't feel good, whether I have enough time, don't have enough, all that stuff, I'm not in charge of that. If I see someone who needs help, It is selfish to not seek to help them. For alcoholism and alcoholics, it's especially important because, again, if I've done these steps and not had a drink, then I know how to tell someone what the steps are to not have a drink. Again, whether I can do it wisely or not, the more inconvenienced I am, the freer I get. I have had moments where I thought to myself, no, I should really stay home and rest. And in resting, I have gotten exhausted. And I've had moments where I've gone literally on foot from one detox to another, to another, to another in a single day, on foot. And I feel free. The root of my suffering is me, the bondage of self. The way out, which is what this was originally called, the way out is seeking to be useful to you. These steps make me fit to be useful to you. If I'm not going to be useful to you as a result of doing them, there was no point to doing them. They're only designed to make me fit to be useful to you. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be useful.